Well, hello everyone. Welcome back to Nom Talk Network. As you probably already have guessed from yesterday, as I've introduced after what I did a review on, welcome to Basic Binges, part of Nom Talk Network. On this show, and what we do here is we review popular shows that are out now while eating and drinking our favorite binge-worthy snacks and drinks. I am your host, Jordyn Orozco, and right now I'm just having a wonderful homebrewed Mai Tai. Love the Mai Tais. Love them. Here we go. It's going to be a wonderful show. Everybody's drinking apparently. And I would love to introduce my guests for the evening. Two wonderful, amazing gentlemen that I've done reviews with. Hi, Derrick. Hello, Bill. How are you all tonight? Let's start with you, Bill. What are you nomming on? What are you drinking?
Oh man, I had Nation's Burgers earlier, and now it's time for a Coke Zero, cool and refreshing. Brought to you by.
I love Coke Zero. That's the only soda I'll drink. Coke Zero. And Derrick, what's going on? What are you up to?
Hey guys, I am from the lovely hotel in Los Angeles in the Marriott. I'm drinking a delicious vodka tonic that's clearly watered down now because I got it like an hour ago. But it really is. I told them to make it a double, so there's basically a splash of tonic in here. So we're gonna get real weird on real weird dreams very quickly. Yes.
Oh my god, I love it. I freaking love it. Well, you're in my hometown. You're in LA, so wonderful, awesome, amazing to see you all. And if you haven't guessed what we're reviewing from last week, we're doing the Sandman episodes 3 and 4. Now, I do have to say, up until this point, this entire series has captivated me. Every single episode keeps me guessing what's going to happen. There's just plenty of content, and we'll get into each episode individually. And I've seen the entire series, but these aren't even my favorite episodes, and I loved them. I loved each of these, right? So let's go in. Let's do a deep dive into 3 and 4. Now, 3 is called Dream a Little Dream of Me, and it features the wonderful, amazing Joanna Constantine and Dream, who finds out that his pouch of sand was sold off to an individual, and he finds out that that individual is Joanna Constantine, who is related to the wonderful and amazing John Constantine and the Constantine lineage and family. And Dream actually makes a reference to the fact that he dealt with a predecessor for Joanna Constantine in a previous life of the Constantines, and we will get to that later on in some of the episodes. But how did we feel about this third episode? For me, it definitely was really awesome that they introduced a new character that sort of we all are sort of familiar with. But I do know that Jefferson, last time when we did our last when we sort of went into how the comics differ from this series, said that Joanna Constantine is actually not in the comics at all. It's actually John who's actually in it. And so I thought this was a really good addition, and I didn't think it took away from the episode at all. And I do love the entire story that was built around her in this one specific episode. And it left me wanting more, right? It left me wanting more and wondering if she was going to appear in the rest of the season. But let's start with you, Derrick. What did you think about this first episode, or this third episode of the Sandman? Did you think it added? What's going on?
Yeah, it's this is such a strange show to talk about episodes individually because I agree that it is a very bingeable show, but it's also a really frustrating show, and it's one of those series and shows where you almost watch out of spite because there is so much going on. But you're not really sure what's going on at the same time. And so you're like, well, I have to keep going, but I'm not entirely sure I want to keep going. And this episode kind of has both of those things where I actually think as an individual episode, it's fantastic. It's a really, really solid episode. I just rewatched it last night. And I think Jenna Coleman as Joanna Constantine is just chef's kiss. I'm not a big Doctor Who fan, but of all the companions, she's always been my favorite. And her turn as like a foul-mouthed, reluctant Constantine it's great. She's absolutely great. I like the, I know Gaiman has been very adamant about doing, kind of some gender swaps and changing things and, intentionally changing things from the comic to the show on purpose. So changing from John Constantine to Joanna Constantine, that wasn't an accident. It was very, very purposeful. He wanted to separate it from whatever had been established in the shows previously, whatever we already understand Constantine as in the medium of TV. So, I mean, obviously going with Jenna was clearly the right choice. Where it gets frustrating, though, is all of this is contained in this single episode. She's so good, and she just shows up, and you get to meet her, and you get to see all that she does, and then that's it. We're done. And by the time we fire up episode 4, that's all wrapped up. And so there's this whole show. When we talk about bingeability, this whole show just functions as like it's separated into individual arcs, and it wants to be an overarching story. But then you have episodes like 3 and 4, which feel very individualized, where they're like anthology episodes are episodic. They kind of connect to everything, but not really. Like you can just watch episode 3 and you get a whole story in one singular episode. But then as soon as we get to 4, everything is different. Like we're going to hell. Like what is happening? So I genuinely enjoy this episode, but I struggled a lot with this show in ways I haven't struggled with shows. It's usually one or the other, but this one feels very much like I get both of those emotions at the same time, where I can't wait for it to end, but I also want to keep watching. So I don't know.
Yeah, I kind of have to agree with you. Like, I feel like every single episode is trying to be its own like mini featurette, like its own mini movie within this universe. And I do have to say, just from the couple of people that I've talked to about the Sandman, the comics in general, it kind of feels that way, where it's like you have plenty of comics to transition from, let's say, from the Joanna Constantine or the John Constantine to Hell, right? Like you have several chapters where you can do that, right? But when Netflix sort of started to adapt it in a way where it's digestible for people that really hadn't seen Sandman, I feel like they did it in a way where it was like, it was frustrating, but I wasn't pissed off about it, right? Like there were certain things where I was just like what? Like, what's going on? And I think we'll talk about it when we talk about the 24/7 episode, which is going to be the next week, where like that episode in itself is a lot to so that episode in itself is a lot to unpack. Episode 6, which is going to be what we're also going to talk about next week, I was bawling at the end of that episode.
That's the best episode of the series, by the way. Just period, side note, it's the best episode of the series.
And I feel like each individual episode in itself, while it may be frustrating, I think for me, it wasn't like there wasn't enough time for me to process like me getting pissed off. It was more of like, oh, I'm into it, right? But I do definitely agree with you. Like it was very frustrating when I was like, no, but I want to see more. Like I want to see more, and you kind of do in a little bit, but it's not in the same aspect of episode 3. I do want to get to the comments really quick. Q says, I had a taco bowl earlier. We love the taco bowls. I love little like freaking like the tortilla where you can like, love the taco bowls. But now he's drinking a root beer. Thank you, Q, for joining us. We always love when you come and join us. Thank you. Bill, let's get to episode 3. What did you think of episode 3?
I dig it. Number one, I'm such a sucker for Constantine storylines to begin with, and seeing her spin into this, and anyone complaining about the gender flipping of Constantine can just suck it, because they're wrong. Yep. Because she plays it fine. I mean, the only appropriate responses are some people are kind of like, she seems to have her shit a little bit too together for Constantine. But that's fine. But as far as Jennifer, she was great. I love the wedding sequence, how they set up. You thought it was going to be the one person that's possessed, and turns out to be the other, and the whole bursty humongo. And again, it kind of keeps in. I actually, so like we noted last time, I came to this series pretty much cold. Other than knowing some of the art, I knew effectively zero about the comic itself and the storyline. So it's kind of like, okay, this is all fresh. And so I actually like it in the sense that you can kind of pick up episodes and run with it. But like the first 4 or 5 episodes kind of constitute one story arc, and then the back season is itself. And what you said is very true, that it can be a self-contained episode, some more than others. There's probably about 3 episodes through the season where it is a tidy little package, and whether it be 24/7, whether it be his whatever the one is, his day with death, doing the walkabout, all of that. In 100 Years episode, all of those are nice little packages, but I dig those because so many series right now are all about the slow fucking burn, and nothing chafes me more than just a House of Cards style takes 6 episodes to do jack squat, and it's insipid. This way, across time, when the story is moving forward, it's fine. And I didn't really find any of the side quests to be overly long, because like everything pretty much tied up that was a side quest happens within an episode. So at least you're going to get that full in and out loop right then and there, as opposed to the daughter in 24, which in every season was the most annoying character ever because their side things were not good. And here we were almost when Shuntover, it's pretty tight. And so here we pick up a few more things. He's after the sand, the ramifications of that, and a lot of it kind of goes back to reinforcing his character as he doesn't have the same kind of empathy as a human would, right? He's not one of those. When he's gonna go in and help Constantine out with the ex-girlfriend problem, he's doing it because in his mind it's the right thing, but it doesn't really phase him one way or the other. It's not that kind of empathy. And so I dig it. It works for me. I hear what you're saying on where it was a struggle for you to kind of get into it, but for me it's like, no, I dug these, and the ones that were self-contained I appreciated both in the overall where it fits, but also those stories are pretty good because for me, Neil Gaiman, while I love his kind of world building, for me his writing kind of is hit or miss depending on what story he's particularly doing. And so this one lends itself to like, okay, I dig what he's doing.
I think it's important to point out that like I forgot which one I was watching. It was before I was watching Sandman, because I have all the time to kill because I'm like not going anywhere because of my broken ankle. I'm like, where am I gonna fucking go? And I've been just like binging shows. But there was a show that I was watching, and there was an episode where, they have the filler episodes where it's just like a bunch of bullshit that gets like, that's just like, we needed 7 episodes. And so the 5th one was just like, oh, let's talk about this side character that's going to just get killed off at the end of the episode. And then it has nothing to do with the main plot or even a subplot of the main story. And I feel like this specific series had none of that, where it's like you're watching it and it's like, cool. Like, while that may have gone off and like how at the beginning, Joanna Constantine, like she struggles with the nightmare of like losing her kid to hell, right? Like she struggles with that nightmare. It added to the story. And then at the very end, right? Like Dream was like, you won't suffer from that anymore because it's in my power to give you this, to give you this because I had to help you, right? And I think Bill, like you were with me last week when we were talking about episodes 1 and 2. I had already started to see it, but this episode I was like, oh, and it was where it was like this individual thinks that he's above us, when in fact, and we'll talk about this next week when we get to episodes 5 and 6, they're not here to like be separate from us. They actually serve us, right? Like they serve a purpose in the world. And I think Joanna Constantine was the beginning of him being like, oh, like, yeah, maybe this is something that I have to look into. Maybe this is something where I have to like humanize my experience more to like really get into the nitty gritty for that, right? Like to do all that. I thought it was extremely creative and extremely awesome at how when they went into Joanna Constantine's ex's apartment and you think like, oh, this is what's going on. And then you finally realize that like her ex had the sand, and because of that could create these sort of like fantasies and things that Joanna got put into. And then like Dream had to come in and say, no, like this sand wasn't made for humans, right? And then she's basically dying in her bed because this like power that is of the endless is basically draining her, right? I do want to point out that Patton Oswalt, who does an amazing job as Matthew, played an incredible role in this specific episode, where he basically was like, in the beginning, he tells Lucien, he's like, I don't need another Raven. Like Jessame was killed, and I don't need another Raven. And then, here we go. And then basically Lucien sends Matthew anyway. And then we find out that Matthew was actually a human on Earth who kind of lived maybe like not such a moral lifestyle, and he was just like, yeah, well, I'm here to help you. And he played a pivotal role in basically saying that like humans cannot be trusted, and so you have to go up there, you have to go and see, you know, what's going on. And so I thought that was really awesome. What did we think about the casting in episode 3? I know, like you said, we got introduced to Joanna Constantine in this. Also, like I said, Patton Oswalt, who played Matthew. I don't know if I can't remember. Did he debuted in 3 or 2?
I think he debuts at the tail end of 2.
Yeah,
and then
3
this is his time to shine when he starts it. Yeah.
So
So I mean, as far as cast, it's so hard to talk about these episodes individually because it's, you know, you get your first 5 episodes, which is all one arc, and then you get your 2 filler episodes, and then you get, you know, the last 3, which are all about the vortex and whatever. And so, but then you get episodes like this where it's like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All of these episodes are just individual packages, and some more than others connect to the overall story. So it's hard to like individualize it, but I'm going to try. So when we talk about this episode specifically, I think that some of the stuff you said, I think you're absolutely correct. So when we talk about casting, I've already said Jenna Coleman is absolutely fantastic. Patton Oswalt, undeniable, a fantastic voice actor, and just a great actor. And I just watched I Love My Dad again, which is just so good, and the stuff he does in there is amazing. But yeah, I think everybody does a great job. I think it's what is his name? Sturgis? What's his first name?
Sorry.
Is that right?
I should know this. I freaking host the show. Oh my God, what do you call it? Tom Sturridge.
Tom, I want to say Jim Strugus, but that's not who it is. Tom Sturgis, got it. He is amazing as the Sandman, and I think you absolutely nailed it. And I think, Bill, you'd mentioned this too, and I think you talked about this in your review of the show overall. He does an incredible job of really embodying what it means to be an anthropomorphized version of dreams. Like he's human, but he's not. He's never actually human. Like that's how we view him, but he is clearly an entity. Like. And he does a really good job in kind of riding that line emotionally, and just kind of how he presents himself to people. And I think this episode is one of those really strong episodes where you start to realize, especially when, you know, she's dying and the sand is, you know, and he's just very much purpose over any of these people. He's got the entire subconscious of all humanity battling around in his brain. He does not have time for this individual relationship garbage. Like that's not what he does. That's not why he's here. And yet he still has this longing for connection, and he still feels somewhat lonely. And you get that sense, and he does such a great job in managing that balance of really looking down on humanity while always having to be beholden to humanity at the same time. And it's a great dichotomy. And I think as an actor, I think he does a really, really good job. So as far as casting, I mean, everybody's knocking it out of the park in both of these episodes, frankly. But again, that's what's so frustrating about it, is that this episode is so good that you're like, just give me a whole series of the Sandman and Constantine. Like, give me the buddy cop movie. I'm ready. Like, I will watch them while Matthew runs around and talks shit. Like, a whole series. Give me a whole spinoff. Let's go. I'm ready. But we don't get that. We get this, and then she walks off in the rain. And while, yes, it leads into another fantastic episode where I'm also like, just give me the stories of Lucifer and Sandman. Like, show me those battle of wits for an entire 10 episode arc. Let's do it. You know, but as far as casting wise, I think in general, everybody does a fantastic job, and it's shot beautifully. Jesus Christ. Like the cinematography here in this show, spared no expense when it comes to production value. Everything looks gorgeous and beautiful, and you feel like somebody is ripping things off the pages without feeling like they're ripping them off. Does that make sense? Like they're not trying to like downplay it or, you know, give it some shade to fit a modern audience or something like that. Like it feels very much like the pages are being brought to life. And I think that has a lot to do with how it's filmed and the casting. So.
Yeah. Bill, what do you think about the casting for episode 3?
I mean, all the way around, like it said, there's not really a weak part, weak characterization or performance anywhere along through here, and everything from from previously we saw Cain and Abel, and they were kind of a little bit more dark comedy versions of Laurel and Hardy. Almost, I mean, just not really, but still, it's like they're more lighthearted kind of a thing. Down to
I'll watch a whole spinoff of that. By the way,
well,
where Abel dies every episode. Down.
Think about it. What we're saying
Totally
here, every Clusterverse episode of character shows up, we would watch a spinoff or a couple of episodes just about them. That says a lot about these little one-off characters. It's like, no, I want to follow them around forever. And so, yeah, that speaks to it just in a nutshell.
Yeah,
absolutely. Q says, "I wish that Dream Sandman would be great. I wish that Dream Sandman would be great in a live action version of Justice League Dark." I think when I was looking up Sandman, I think he actually became a part of a group. I can look it up while you all are talking, but I think he actually became a part of some sort of like Justice League-ish type of group in the DC universe at some point. And so that's actually a good comment that when I was looking up all this shit, because I'm a nerd, and then I'm like, oh, Sandman, and like research all this stuff, and I'm like, what's going on? So it's really great. There was no hit, there was no miss for me. I think Jenna Coleman, I am a Doctor Who fan. When I was younger, I watched Doctor Who, and then it came out and like all these streaming services watched it. My go-to Doctor Who people when I first started watching it were Rory and Karen Gillian, who played, oh my God, now I'm forgetting it. Shit.
I should know this.
No, I'm kidding.
What is it? Rory and oh God, I should know. I've watched almost every episode.
River was the daughter. It was anyway. Rory and Amy Pond.
Amy Pond. Thank you.
Thank you.
Amy Pond.
Thanks, producer Steph. Those are my. Yeah. Those were my, like, when I first started watching Doctor Who, like that's when I started watching Doctor Who, and they were my the people that I were introduced. But Jenna Coleman came around, and I was like, fuck yeah, I love Jenna Coleman. This is great. And then seeing her in this role, I was like, she's gonna kill it. Like, there was no doubt in my mind. I was like, oh, Jenna Coleman's gonna be Joanna Constantine. I was like, who's Joanna Constantine? What's going on? What, and this is something that I will point out like later on, but like even so, like it's almost emotional for me to see how much LGBTQ plus representation is going on within this entire series, because I don't think I've ever been seen as much as I am in this specific series. And yeah, there's been shit where it's like, oh, like Looking, or like other programs that have been geared towards, LGBTQ plus men or masculine identified individuals. But this show specifically, because I'm into, comic books, because I'm into, DC, Marvel, all these other things, like this show specifically hit a specific place in my heart where I was like, this is how shows should be. And it was normalized. It wasn't like it was a thing where I was like, I'm watching this and this feels weird to me. Like my dad came in like a couple of times, and he was like, what's going on? Oh, cool. Like, hey, so she's, oh, okay, cool. And it wasn't a thing where I was like, this doesn't feel weird to me. Right. Like,
yeah,
and I grew up in a generation where, like I was secretly watching like Queer as Folk, like in my room. I was like putting it on the VHS, recording it, like when it was on like Showtime. And then I would put it in my fucking TV in my room, and I would watch it secretly because I didn't want my parents to know. But this is like something where I'm like, my parents could watch this and I wouldn't be right.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point too, and that's something that I think this show does really well, and I think it's why. Well, apparently my new kink is watching Gaiman go after all these fanboys that are trying to like gatekeep his own production, and he's like, no, bitch, I wrote it. I will tell you what I want. This is what I want. Shut the hell up. Like it's my favorite Twitter, my favorite Twitter discourse of all time. It's so great. But you used a great word, and it's the normalization of it, right? Where there's nothing about this show that feels targeted to an LGBTQ community, right? Where it's like made for this group of people. it's just a part of the life and the world that exists. And that is like, it's so refreshing to just be like, oh yeah, this is just people living their lives the way we should and making the choices that everybody should just be fucking cool with. And it's awesome. And I applaud Gaiman for, really striking that balance of not trying to make this show something that is like some kind of political statement, but also making a lot of purposeful gender swaps that feel right. Like everything about it just feels right in the gender swaps and the relationships and in the representation. It all just feels like, yeah, this is a living, breathing world that exists, and it has everybody, and we're not just all big muscled out white superheroes. Like there's a lot more going on here, and that's a little bit more of a reflection of what life is actually like. So yeah, I think the normalization of it all is fantastic.
Yeah, and I think it's a lot to say where it's almost like I think I would like weirdly compare this to Schitt's Creek, where it was like stuff was normalized, like you said, in a way where it was like I didn't feel like things that are taboo or like things that I would get made fun of or like out in like society, like watching this show I could escape for a little bit and be like, yeah, this is actually normal and I'm okay like watching this and I feel good watching this. Right, with this series it was like, yeah, I get that it's fiction, but also like you're right, like this stuff happens every day and it's normal, right? And so I feel like so let's get to it. Let's get to one of the most I think visually stunning episodes of the entire series, which is episode 4, and it is called A Hope in Hell. And this one specifically, it follows Dream going into hell. And I do want to point out, and this is something that I did look up, that the Lucifer Morningstar that is played by Gwendolyn Christie, who we all know and love from Game of Thrones. I love her. She's an amazing actress. She's awesome. The only problem I had with this episode is her fucking wig. She needed a new fucking wig. I thought that wig was atrocious. It should have been taken off immediately, and something else should have been done. That's the only issue I have with this episode. Other than that, it follows Dream going into hell. What I was going to say is that the Lucifer Morningstar in the Sandman is the same Lucifer Morningstar that we see in the TV show Lucifer. So Neil Gaiman actually came out and said that I think he was actually consulted or was an executive producer on Lucifer because that specific character was the same one that was actually in the Sandman. And so it's supposed to be like a weird story arc type thing. But in this one, like you said, they gender swapped for Gwendolyn Christie, who I think did an amazing job at Lucifer. And so it follows Dream going into hell to retrieve his helm, which is the helmet with the long little trunk that looks like a plague doctor mask, but like longer. And he finds out that a demon of hell actually was traded the helm for I think it was the helm of protection, which the woman had and eventually gave to her son, which we will get into I think was it 4 or 5? No, it was 4. I think it was actually 4.
It's 4, yeah. Where
we see that she actually gives the helm of protection to him, and he basically frees himself from it. Basically, if somebody tries to harm you, the helm protects you from it and basically kills them. As we see in the episode, it turns them inside out and explodes them, and their guts go everywhere. It was utterly amazing, and I loved that depiction of it. But this episode specifically, I thought was visually stunning. The scenes in hell, the places that it almost was like a Dante's Inferno meets like Hercules in a weird way, but also meets like Greek myth. It came to so many intersections for me that I was just like, this is great, right? And like you see Dream being led to the throne room by another demon who he thought was tricking him. Matthew, follows him, his raven. And it was just an amazing episode. They basically end up challenging each other, and the battle between them, right? You think they're going to fight like physically, right? You think they're going to pick up swords and they're going to just chop each other up. Like they're going to fuck each other up. But realistically, it is a fight of intelligence. It is a fight of words, and it is beautiful the way that they sort of visually represent what they're actually doing, right? And I thought this episode was just awesome visually for me. Let's go to Bill first. What did you think about episode 4?
Episode 4, I actually really enjoyed, and actually there's something that we can kind of touch on here. Is you guys talked a lot about representation, seeing yourselves. Like, my first thought was not nearly enough white folks. Kidding. No, it's like, I don't see myself in everybody. How will I ever understand the story? What I actually loved was that moment when Dream is walking along and sees the one gal imprisoned, right? And she's there. But when she's talking to him, who she sees as someone entirely different, right? He sees who she had known at the time, someone that was also dark skinned, everything else. But it's so he appears to different people different ways. Lucifer, we could say the same thing. How we happen to see it as Gwendolyn Christie, somebody else sees it as Netflix Lucifer or whatever network it was on. It doesn't matter, because it's kind of like how you perceive those particular aspects. And what I loved about the show, not just this episode, but all the way through, is all of the casting. Those people were cast because they fucking rock. Has nothing to do with trying to do anything or checking lists. They just were really superb, and they fit, and it makes a nice homogenized world, like you said, that feels like you look outside and you see the kind of spectrum that you see here. And it's not really, if there's anywhere that feels a little quirk, is later on when JCM shows up and the rest of the gang, because by that point. But then again, we all know households that are kind of like that, kind of eccentric and complete with the gothy pair running around.
I thought they were all imaginary, by the way. Like when they all got introduced, I was like, none of these people are real. I don't trust a single person in this house.
I love that. But this episode, again, it's kind of like how it goes through. And again, it shows how well that they walk a line, that the whole kind of like one-upmanship battle that occurs between Dream and Lucifer, a hair's breadth to the other side, and the whole thing is cheeseball. It's completely corny and cheesy and dumb, but here it's done, held just back from that edge, and it's earnest. And it's kind of like, they walk a dangerous line several times in this show, and they pull it off to a plum.
Yeah, I think that everything in Hell is hands down some of my favorite stuff. I think you're absolutely right. Visually, it is almost a masterpiece. Like, it is just visually stunning. It's beautiful. You feel the hellish paths that they're walking on, right? Like, that the Sandman is basically protected. He's an honored guest. He's an endless, but he is out of his element, right? He is in a place that he doesn't have his full strength, right? And you feel that as he's being led by Squattleblot. Like, you get the sense that, like, yeah, Hell's not a nice place. Like, there's nothing but danger here, even for people who are immortal and people and entities who are endless. Like, there is still harm that can be done. And I think that's something that this episode does really, really well, is that it just kind of, you really do feel like you're in hell. And there's a great line, and it's a Matthew says it up top when he's watching all the dead, because Sandman is like, oh, we should follow the dead. And he goes, you have to bring your own fire to hell. I love that line so much, because that is just like, that's the most hellish, torturous insults of, like, yeah, not only are you going to burn in eternal fire, but that fire you're burning in, yeah, you have to bring to hell yourself, and you have to carry it on a long and winding road. It's just little visual cues like that. I think it's great. I agree, Bill. I love that little scene with him when he's interacting with that prisoner, where it just kind of, and this is something I feel like I wish the show kind of does a little bit more, is it really does demonstrate how powerful and how long and how endless the Sandman actually is. The fact that he appears to a woman who has been imprisoned in hell for 10,000 years as something completely different, unseen, completely before our time and our world and what we experience. But he was there, and he has interactions with these people, and this is how they view him. He is not a human. He is an entity. He is an idea. He is dreams, and everybody sees dreams differently. And I just love. I agree that little interaction just gives you so much information about what it truly means to be endless. Like, he's been around this long to where someone who's been in prison for 10,000 years sees him walk by and recognizes him as something else that we've never seen before. So I love that. And then the Battle of Wits was just, I had no idea where this was going to go or what was going to happen. And then they all just start in on the I am Wolf. And I was like, holy shit, it's about to go down. And it's just visually, it's so good. And again, you're right, Bill, that it's hair. Just one bad line delivery or one poor script writing, one word can just bring this entire scene to just being the dumbest thing you've ever seen in your life. And the fact that they just skate by on that thin ice to make it phenomenal is it's a feat all on its own. Whatever gripes I have on this show, that is something that they do very, very well. So yeah. The only thing I don't like about this episode is anything with John D. That whole character, I feel bad because I absolutely love the performance. Chef's kiss. That guy never doesn't deliver. Like, he is always on fire. But that character and everything about, maybe it's just the arc and how it's brought in to where none of it really felt purposeful to me. Even when it all gets wrapped up in episode 5 or whatever, I can't get on board with John D. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it almost, so I'm glad you brought that up because it almost was like, I don't want to say it almost felt forced, but it almost was like, most of the characters that have already appeared at this point in the film, or sorry, in the series, there's already like a little backstory, or there's already something where I'm like, I can relate or I can do that. But when John D's introduced, I'm like, so you've been in a facility for your entire life, basically. You're old, and you still have the mentality of a young boy. It felt weird to me. It felt really weird. It didn't feel fluid. And then basically, as it continues on to episode 5, I loved that. Well, I don't want to say loved in a way where it was like, I loved everything that happened, but I loved the evolution of all the other actors that were in sort of that episode. For him, I was just sitting there like, why are you here? In like a weird way.
Yeah.
And so I definitely do have to agree with you on that.
It feels transported from another show. Like, it doesn't, yeah. I know that he is, I get that maybe in the comics he's incredibly integral. Maybe there's more story to be fleshed out there. I understand the whole idea of the Ruby and why, like, I get all of that, but it also just feels like this is a completely different series. He's a villain in somewhere else, like in another magical fantasy world. He's an actual villain. Here, I never felt like he fit. And that, I remember watching the episode. I know we're jumping ahead, but I remember watching the diner episode. I thought we changed shows. I legitimately was just like,
it was weird.
I was like, I'm not watching the Sandman anymore. I'm watching, like, we got through almost the entire episode. And both my girlfriend and I were like, it's going to make sense. At some point, it's going to connect to what's happening. And
it was like the current, yeah. No,
yeah, I feel that way.
The current season of Riverdale.
Yeah.
You're like, what the fuck is going on? You're like, it's like a whole new fucking thing, right?
Yeah. But I feel that way in this episode too, where John D just feels, I understand the lineage and I understand why it connects. I get all of that, but I also feel like it doesn't actually connect. It feels forced. And for a show that does so many things well naturally, it's a jarring experience. And the way that the whole episode is edited, where it's just back and forth between Hell and John D, Hell and John D, Hell and John D. It's like, I just, give me all the hell. I don't care about whatever's going on over here. But anyways.
Yeah, I want to specifically talk about the costume changes that happened really quickly during the Battle of Wits and during when they were doing it. Literally, it was, Dream basically asks the demon. So Dream summons the demon with his sand because the sand can locate where his helm is. And the demon brings him, and basically the demon won't give him his helm back. And basically he says, I challenge you. And they have the right to ask somebody else to fight for them. But Dream is like, no, like, I'm going to do it by myself. And the demon says, I choose Lucifer. And so when they do that, the minute they're going to fight, it like the camera sort of pans to each individual and they switch costumes really quickly, which I am in love with the S&M fucking costumes that they just changed into, like, automatically. I was like, hell yeah, they're here for fucking, like, they're here to, like, not play. Like, they're here to freaking, like, they're gonna win, right? Because, you know, but my thing was, I was like, shit, Dream is going against the fucking, like, he's going against the devil. Like, and I was like, fuck, like, and it was that tension and it was that thing. And you're right. It could have gone in a way where I was like, this is stupid. Like, where the fuck are they going? But I was on the edge of my seat as much as I could be because my leg was up and I was like propped up and I was like, I literally, like, I was like leaned back and then I got up and I was like, oh my God, what is he gonna say? And like the minute she was like, I'm the anti-life, and I'm like, oh fuck. I'm like, please don't die. You can't die. There's like 6 other episodes. How are you fucking dying? Get the fuck up. And then Matthew comes and it's like, no, you're blah, blah, blah. And he's like, oh, I'm Hope. And then I was like, okay, good. Oh my God. Okay. Whew. And it was that thing where I'm like, every episode that I watch is like a mini movie. It's like a mini, like, you know, featurette where I'm like, hell yeah, like this is exactly what needs to happen, you know, and all this stuff. And so I just, you know, but the costumes in that, especially when he arrives in hell and like talks to Lucifer Morningstar with like the red and with the wings set for the fucking hair, I was like, this is on point. Like everything is on point with this. Even the demons, even her second hand was just beautifully done. Amazing. Was I love this series. Like I fell in love with this entire series. So let's go to Eric. Was there anything else that you saw in episode 3 and 4 that you might want to point out to other people where you're like, hey, you know, they might have not caught that, that you may have caught in your first or second watch?
I mean, on a second watch, I actually think these 2 episodes are better than I thought. Because I'm like Bill, I came in cold. I own the comic and I've just never read it. I just somebody gave it to me and it's just sat on my shelf. And so I knew that it had something to do with dreams, but I'd never actually read the series. So I was very cold when it comes to this. And so I had a lot of issues in the first watch, but watching these 2 episodes again and just kind of knowing what to look for and just not being so taken aback because I know how everything kind of fits together as a whole. I think I can walk away from it and say that these are the episodes I think that really stand out. I think episodes 3, 4, 6, you know, these are episodes that like they feature some of the best characters. You get Joanna Constantine, you get Lucifer Morningstar. In 6, you get Death, and all 3 of them are just phenomenal characters, like we had talked about before, Bill. Where I'll watch a whole series of all of them. Like, give me this Lucifer Morningstar, I'll watch it tomorrow. Like I'm in. Let's go. So I think overall, I think when you start to kind of once you've captured the whole story, I think it's actually pretty good. And these are episodes that you can just go back and watch. It doesn't matter what happened before or after. If you've already watched the whole series, I would actually say to go back and watch 3, 4, 6, because they are. And even the diner episode, I know it's such a weird fucking episode, but once it's contextualized, and now you understand what's happening, I actually think 3 through 6 is the strongest part of the entire series. So yeah, I would say they're worth watching again. You can skip the John D stuff, I guess. I feel so bad saying that because he really is great. Like he's so good. If he was just in another series, like if he was just somewhere else, he'd be give him an Emmy. I'm down. Like give him an award for his performance. But it just feels so awkward here. But anyways, yeah.
That was Professor Lupin. So you need to, yeah. I'm just kidding. Anyway, I love.
Listen,
anyway,
I have a Professor Lupin wand. Trust me, I know.
Yeah. Bill, anything that you would add to episode 3 and 4? Is there something that maybe we haven't talked about that you probably saw in it that you were like, oh, viewers should pay attention to?
I mean, not really. It's kind of like this is one just kind of relax and um you just kind of relax and let it happen, right? Uh because overall we um overall coming into it and just kind of like encountering the characters and seeing what's going on, finding out their motivations and who's backstabbing and who's actually who's familiar. Is the new Raven really is a nice little fellow, or is he something else? And everything, and just kind of experiencing it as it goes. So I don't think I would really call anything out particularly, other than just it's probably something you can even watch more than once, because like you said, the costume changes and stuff like that, these little things that happen in the background that is going to be very easy to miss. And so it's kind of like, just enjoy, just go with it. And it's funny talking, we keep touching forward to 24/7 and the AKA Diner episode. And the more you're talking about, it's like what I hooked into it is it pulls forward to the convention that happens later. And that really the whole, to your point, what hooks around it is it kind of tells a little bit about, was it John D? His where his angle of crazy is at. But the other part of it, which that could actually have been sidelined for me, the important part was that conversation in the booth. That happens there, because that's kind of them starting to plot it out, I think. But the rest of it, it doesn't really tie in. But we'll get into that again next time. But I just keep thinking about it. But Brienne of Tarth, awesome. We wondered what happened to her after she passed away in Westeros. Now she knows. Now we know. She ends up ruling hell.
She went to hell. She went to hell and became the devil.
I think exactly. this is what happened when she died in The Last Jedi. She went to hell and became Lucifer Morningstar. Could we just see her disappear in a pit of fire? It totally makes sense, guys.
No,
it's all connected.
Who got sent to hell after Star Wars was the people who shit on her character and never let her do anything other than wear shiny armor.
I will never forgive them for that. I was so fucking excited for her, and then they just wasted her. And I was like, why? Not only is she a phenomenal actress, but you've decorated her in one of the dopest, most badass stormtrooper outfits in the whole Star Wars universe, and you were like, no, she's gonna get 2 lines and she's gonna die in every movie she's in. I was like, what the fuck are you doing? And anyways, that's a whole different episode.
Just with an eye showing too,
just,
and then like
what?
balls.
Yeah.
Who hated her? Who? Somebody brought her on and casted her, and some producer was like, I can't stand that woman. I'm ruining her character, or I'm not giving the show any money. It felt purposeful. It was but justice right. For Phasma. Justice for Phasma.
True, but you know what? You are absolutely right, Jordyn, that if this series is eligible at all for a Razzie, it's for her hairpiece. It should walk away with that award, bar none.
I don't want to see the King of Hearts from Alice in Wonderland blonde version on a fucking character in this series. Like, I don't want to see it. And that's exactly what we fucking got. Yeah. And I'm sitting there because you have these you have these 2 curls that do this, on her wig. And I'm like, you got that at Party City. Like, you got, somebody just needs to, I would have even been satisfied with a bowl cut or something. Do you know what I mean? Like, anything but that. It just looked too like medieval, but also it just didn't work for me.
But it's also to your point, it's so glaring because everything else is so gorgeous. Like, all the rest of the costumes are give him a Razzie for that, and give him an Emmy, Oscar for the costume design. It's such a massive dichotomy. It stands out so bad because everything else is so beautifully crafted, and then you just got this one ridiculous, stupid wig.
So I want to know who went through all of the Black Sabbath, Metallica, all of those guys' hairdos, right? Even in the day, went through all of that, saw the wig that they put on Gwendolyn Christie and said, that's the one that I want. I want to know who made that decision. Because I'm like, there's so many fucking hairdos that were satanic, right? That like could have been amazing, that could have been beautiful on her. Even if she would have kept the same hair as Brienne of Tarth, right? Like I would have been fine with that. This one, no, I wasn't.
Yeah.
I was not fine with it.
Not only was the hairpiece bad, it was style bad. It was, just think, a bunch of, in the show of the quality, production quality of all of this, someone put her in that, and they went, yeah, that was good. Let's go.
Roll it.
What? It's
Roll tape.
It's 5:45 on Friday, and they're out of time. It's like, fuck it, let's shoot it. Not gonna happen. But
like it was not worthy for the ruler of hell. I will just say that.
Or for
yeah, right. Thank you.
Yeah.
It didn't do justice. Justice for
Gwendolyn.
Yes. Justice for Gwendolyn.
Justice for Gwendolyn.
I'm on board.
Oh, the one thing, going back to Phasma, I had a coworker that I used to work with a long time ago. We loved Star Wars when it came out, the new ones, and she was like, "Oh, Phasma's my main girl," and I was like, "Okay." So she was this lovely, powerful, wonderful Black woman who has an amazing family and all that stuff. So I would call her Phasmaniqua, and that would be her name. And she loved that. And she did it because I got her like a cup with Phasma on it and all this stuff because that was our girl. And there was just no freaking, I was like, really? You had like 2 lines. You died with your eye showing. And I was like, that's just stupid. I was like, that's just not it's not the vibe.
I do want to say too, just to answer the question a little bit, and I think I said this, but I just want to reiterate it again. I actually would recommend watching this show again. I think this is a 2-pass show, especially for someone like myself and Bill, who came into this very cold and we didn't know what to expect. We just kind of knew that it existed out there in the dreaming, and then it shows up on Netflix. The more I think about it, and I feel like I was pretty harsh, but I also feel like I was pretty fair in my review. I don't know that I would change anything, but watching these 2 episodes again, I was actually more enthralled having already seen it than I was the first time. I was much more engaged because I just kind of knew what I wanted to gravitate towards. I knew what I enjoyed. I knew how it all fit into the story. So all that surprise and shock and frustration and confusion and whatever, all of that was gone, and I could just enjoy it for what it was. So I actually think no matter how you come out of this series, whether it's, hey, I absolutely adored it, or you're like, it was kind of whatever, I would actually recommend to just watch the whole thing again. And particularly episodes 3 through 6, they're the best episodes for sure, by far and away. But I think overall, like I actually am gonna probably just start the series over before I go to bed, because the rewatching it really kind of changed my perspective of it highlighted what I liked the most about those episodes, and I wasn't so thrown off by the things that I don't. So sure, I don't care for John D, but the episode, everything else around it is so good. I kind of want to watch it again. I want to be invested in it again. So yeah.
Yeah, I think you have a good point. Like, I watched each episode once, but I had to take moments where I was like, okay, I can't get to another episode because there's so many emotions like going on inside me. Where it was like, I think it was, so I stopped after episode 5, which is 24/7, and I was like, I'm not fucking watching. But like, that was a lot to unpack for a day, and so I'm just gonna end it there. And then the next day I woke up and I was like, all right, I'm going to start with episode 6, bawling. I was like, I can't process this. I was like, I can't do this. This is something that I have to like, and then like later on that day, I just continued watching, the rest of it. But I think it was like another day until I finished like 8, 9, and 10, where it was just like, I have to just finish the series. And we'll get to it later, but I was a little disappointed with the way that it ended. And
those are the weakest episodes. 8, 9, and 10 are the weakest episodes of the show by far and away. But
yeah, but I think I'm going to take your advice and watch the whole entire series like again, because it's like 40, 45 minutes an episode, and it's very easy to binge now that I've seen it and know what to expect. But I do feel like there are things that I missed from watching it. Right, there are things that I would have loved to just seen and know and just for your reference, Derek, I know Bill already knows. Like I came into this cold too, where like I had no reference to the Sandman, and the only way that I knew like a little bit was going on is because like I obviously do my research before I watch the show. So I'm like, I'm gonna just like I want to know a little bit of what's going on. I don't want to know the whole plot because I don't want it to spoil it for me. But I did sort of research. I was like, this is going to be very interesting, and it exceeded my expectations in a way where it was like this could have gone really badly. Like this entire series could have been horrible. Like I could have watched 2 episodes and been like, this is terrible, I'm not watching it again. But it captivated me in a way where I was like, each episode was its own lesson, and each episode was its own unique gem in a way where I was like, people need to just freaking watch this, right? They need to. And I've been telling everybody, even people that aren't into like superhero or like movies or like TV shows that are like, you know, like of this caliber, I'm like, you just need to watch it for the sake of like just feeling human, like just feeling like there are things that are out of our control, but also like, you know, and this is something that I'll get into like talking about later on in other episodes, but like there are things that we can't see or feel or touch or like taste that like get brought up in this entire series where it's like it's in a way where it's digestible, but also in a way where it's beautiful. And you can look at it and say, this is awesome. And this is so like it's metaphysical, it's spiritual in a way where it's like it's not necessarily religious, but it's like everybody goes through death, right? Everybody goes through some type of desire, despair, destruction, right? Like all of his siblings, we all experience that in our human lives. And this entire series, I think, just humanized that experience for me in a way where it was like, yeah, I get that this is fiction, but in a way, I loved it in a way where I was like, maybe I do have some control over like the things. Anyway, like, you know, we were talking earlier about how this gets really deep sometimes. So, but yeah, anyway, I know we're reaching the end of our freaking stream. We're reaching the end of everything. Any last minute thoughts about the Sandman? Let's go to Bill.
Watch it. Thumbs up. All the popcorn. Yeah.
All of it, all of it, all of it. Derek, episode 3 and 4, last minute thought.
Yeah, I mean, episodes 3 and 4, after a rewatch, I really enjoy these episodes. And I think the strengths of the episodes outweigh some of the flaws that I feel, especially watching it again. And these are the kinds of episodes, like I said, that have inspired me to just rewatch the show. And I, like I said, I don't know that I'll change my rating. I gave it a 3 out of 5. For the whole series. I don't know that I'll necessarily change it, but it definitely makes me appreciate the things that it does well significantly more than I did upon a first watch. So
sure. Yeah. And I agree with both of them. You need to watch it. It is absolutely beautiful. It's amazing. It's done well. It's done in a way where it's not campy, but it's also not necessarily like unlikable. And there's only been a few people where they're like, it wasn't for me. And I'm like, cool, like it's not for you. But most of the people that I've talked to are like, this show is freaking amazing. I'm like, I told you. Yeah. So anyway, that's pretty much all the time that we have to talk about Sandman's episode 3 and 4. Before we leave, I want to know where we can meet our lovely, wonderful guests. So Derek, where can we find you on the socials?
Yeah, so you guys can find me on Instagram and Twitter at DROK Comedy. That's DROK Comedy. And you can find me on Facebook, just Derrick Murray, just my name. And then always check out Nerdbot, nerdbot.com. All my reviews are up there. I try to review as much as I possibly can, as much as my eyes will allow before they burn out of my face from consuming content. But no, you can check out everything there. Nerdbot.com, great website. You know, everything you need nerdy is all there.
And Bill, where can we find you? Where can we see your wonderful, amazing, and awesome reviews?
You can find me online on all channels at Bill RW and the number 3, and you can find me as well on Nerdbot. Whatever. When Derek doesn't do stuff, I try to do stuff on the other side, or we both do it at the same time.
Yeah.
Tag team.
Yeah. I think we have like 4 reviews for Sandman on Nerdbot. Like I think you, me, Mav, and DHK all did a review, and they were all different and kind of similar at the same time, which is awesome. I love that.
I feel left out. I feel like I need to get in on the review chain gang, but I'm not going to do it because I have a thwarted way of being like, oh, this is really good, and then I'm like later on, I'm like, it was terrible. Like, don't watch it, you know. So that's
dude.
what
Marianne
happens.
always gets mad at me with that. Is I'll say one thing that I liked or I didn't like it, and then like 2 days later, I'm like, that really sucked. And it happens because recency bias is real, and also just having walked out of it, sometimes like, oh my god, that was great, and then 5 minutes later, it's like, what? No, Star Trek Into Darkness. There you go. Next.
Oh my god, yes, that's a great example, Bill.
Anyway, you can find me on Instagram, City of Stars 13. Follow, like, do all that stuff. Don't really post that much, but hopefully soon I will. Other than that, it was awesome. Thank you to my guests, Derrick and Bill. Y'all are amazing. Derrick, I always love hearing your perspectives. Bill, same thing. I love hearing the perspective of reviewers and writers. It's something that I probably will never do, and I love to get the difference of perspective. So thank you all for joining us. That's all the time we have to talk about the Sandman episode 3 and 4. But thank you all for tuning in. Be sure to join our Discord to keep the conversation going. And you can listen to our show on Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitch, all of the above. All of our platforms are at Nom Talk Network. Shout out to our producer, Steph. Thank you so much, Steph, for doing this on time, even though you were out of work late and you did all this stuff. We love you. We appreciate you. You make this show happen. You make this freaking channel happen, and we love you. So tune in to our next show, which is going to be a non-mock review, which is going to be Event Horizon, the 25th anniversary, on Monday night. If you haven't seen that fucking movie, you're dumb, but not really. You need to watch it. I love Event Horizon. It was like one of the scariest things.
I'm gonna crash that episode. I don't even know if I can. I'm gonna crash that episode. I'm letting you know right now, Stephanie. I'm crashing your Event Horizon episode. It's happening.
You're gonna be in the chat like, roar! Just like all that stuff.
I don't care if you have guests either. I'm bump them. I'm coming on.
Love it. Watch it. Until then, I'm your host, Jordyn Orozco, and I hope you have an anomalous evening. See y'all later. Bye.